All right, good evening, everyone. The time is now 7:31 p.m., and I'd like to call to order the June 28th, 2023 Downers Grove Public Library Board of Trustees meeting. If we could go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge that the Downers Grove Public Library sits on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral homelands of Native peoples. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the indigenous people who have been caretakers of the land throughout generations, past and present. We invite you to learn more about the genocide and forced displacements by non-Native settlers and the ongoing injustices against Native peoples. Caitlin, can you proceed with roll call?
Trustee Doherty.
Here.
Trustee Humphries.
Here.
Trustee Kuntia.
Here.
Trustee Nienberg.
Here.
Trustee Sladak.
Here.
President Gagani.
Here. All right, I'd like to extend a welcome to all of our visitors. Thank you on behalf of the trustees for your interest in the library. Item number 4 is the approval of minutes from May 17th, 2023 and May 18th, 2023 committee of the whole meetings.
I will make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Can we go ahead and proceed with the roll call?
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Humphries.
Yes.
Trustee Kuntia.
Yes.
Trustee Nienberg.
Abstain.
Trustee Sladak.
Yes.
President Gagani.
Yes. Those have been passed and approved. Item number 5 is financial matters for May and June 2023.
Sorry. As of the end of May, we are 41.6% through the year. The first installment of our property tax has been received and the revenues are as expected. On the expenditures side, you will see that 5323 special legal will be over budget. That's as expected due to the third-party investigation being done by an attorney on behalf of the board. 5470, other equipment repair and maintenance, is at 119.4% due to repair needs, but generally our building operations director, Ian Knorr, offsets any overages in this line by going under budget in 5430, which is building maintenance services. And if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer them. You also have the fund balance sheet was not received by the library from the village until after the board packet went out, so you guys all have that as a paper copy in front of you.
Do you have any questions or comments? Trustees?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve financial matters as presented. Can we proceed with roll call?
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Humphries.
Yes.
Trustee Kuntia.
Yes.
Trustee Nienberg.
Aye.
Trustee Sladak.
Yes.
President Gagani.
Yes. All right. We are on to item number 6, which is public comment on agenda items. Before I open the floor, I want to remind everyone that this is your opportunity to address the board. It's not a question and answer session. The library and board always welcome comments, and there are several additional ways to have your comments heard. You can email the board at libraryboard@dglibrary.org, through the form on our website at dglibrary.org/feedback, and by phone, chat, email to the library, and on paper, How Did We Do forums available in the library. If you are commenting tonight, we ask that you please state your name for the record. Please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less and be respectful of everyone speaking. So we will open up to public comments on items that are on the agenda. So these are any comments related to updated service policies, Personnel policy changes. Yes.
Bylaws?
Bylaws are on the agenda, yes.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Laura Boyce. I will address 3 topics regarding the bylaws. Number 1, the direction this library board is going. Number 2, the direction we would like you to go. And number 3, the reasons we ask you to engage in true non-discrimination, inclusion, and local rule. Number 1, the direction this library is going. Since 2020, this library board has pushed for radical, leftist, and anti-racist changes to the library's culture and policies in ways that violate the U.S. and Illinois constitutions, civil rights laws, and Illinois Local Library Act, which is referenced in the current bylaws. The Local Library Act requires the board to render the use of this library for the greatest benefit to the greatest number of residents and taxpayers. This board's proposed new bylaws to be considered tonight delete any reference to the Illinois Local Library Act. This may be a way to avoid future violations of the Act, and it may signal that you no longer intend to answer to local residents and taxpayers, notwithstanding the strategic planning that has been active here. Article 3 of the proposed bylaws under governance states that this board will operate under legal authority of the state of Illinois, including but not limited to the U.S. and Illinois constitutions and the Illinois Library Act, not the local act, the Library Act, and other regulations promulgated by the Secretary of State. The buzzwords operating under legal authority of the state means submitting to state authoritarian control. The state prioritizes sexualization of children per the national sex education standards, gender influencing that is being pushed by Governor Pritzker, and woke practices supported by the Secretary of State, Alexei Giannoulias, state librarian. On TV, Giannoulias said parents and only parents have the right and responsibility to restrict their children's and only their children's access to library resources. But what he really means is that only parents can try to restrict their children's access while schools and public libraries have sexual materials on display everywhere, and they continue to push sex education on our kids. The amazing thing is Giannoulias ran on a platform of rebuilding trust in our public institutions. Downers Grove Library's newly proposed Article 3 reveals plans to subscribe to and affiliate with the American Library Association, a Marxist-led organization. It says this board will work to the American Library Association's Bill of Rights for guidance and will adopt such guidance when required by law. This is disturbing. The American Library Association Bill of Rights linked to the proposed bylaws state that books and library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people in the community, and so on. Sounds good, but the language is designed to deceive us. The American Library Association presents only the left-wing point of view. It supports exposing children to leftist ideologies and sexually explicit materials. And the Bill of Rights says a person's rights to use a library should not be denied because of a person's age. Does this mean that minors have the right to freely access pornography in Downers Grove Library, which is, again, accessible everywhere? Let us test the ALA's Bill of Rights as it would apply to recent restrictions taken by this library. On February 9, 2023, Allison Reynolds, Children's Service Manager, denied a resident's request for children's story time featuring the book As You Grow by Kirk Cameron. In her email, Allison said, "We don't think As You Grow is a good candidate for inclusion in our regular story times. Because story times are open to the community, including those of various faiths, we make it a point not to share any books during story time that come from a particular faith angle. Further, our goal is for anyone who walks into our regular story times to feel comfortable and welcome. Kirk Cameron's faith-based book has been denied at 50 woke libraries across the country. Unfortunately, these libraries feature sexually explicit materials for children, drag queen story hours, and the trans cult is widely known as a religion. Indoctrination, They all refuse to allow children to hear a book about biblical values and wisdom. On June 1st, 2023, a local resident asked the Adult and Teen Services manager here. He said he had never seen a conservative-leaning book in the hot read section of the library. So he asked, could there be some balance? The request was denied. Van McGarry said, unfortunately, such a display or section would not be possible for us to create. The materials in our collection are curated by library staff using library's collection development policies. So the Downers Grove Library curating policies allow left-leaning books, but don't tolerate conservative views or books. So here's what we are asking. The direction we'd like the Downers Grove Library to go is to not approve the proposed bylaws as drafted, but instead publicly disavow the American Library Association and affirm local control for issues pertaining to this community's library. Review the library budget and determine whether grant money is how much is received and appropriated by the library system. Limit the chaos around
You're
the
at
book
5 minutes.
banning. Pardon me?
You're at 5 minutes.
I'm talking, thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder to please be respectful to everyone during their comments. Keep your noises to a minimum before speaking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenny, and I'm a Downers Grove resident. The Library Bill of Rights is the American Library Association's basic policy on intellectual freedom and library service. It is based in part on the legal framework for the provision of public library service provided by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which protects and promotes library users' intellectual freedom through its guarantees of freedoms of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to receive information. It is comprised of 7 articles intended to guide the provision of library services for users of all ages. The framework provided by the Library Bill of Rights addresses the library's obligation to provide users access to all available materials and all points of view. To that end, I have seen plenty of conservative books in this library, in the new books section and featured elsewhere. It also addresses the obligation to avoid discrimination in the provision of library services. It is thus rooted in the United States' long commitment to protect individual liberties. The courts have repeatedly said that children and students have First Amendment rights. ALA's commitment to freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of inquiry, and freedom of belief without government interference is reflected in its landmark statement, the freedom to read, which we should all be grateful turned 70 years old this year. It says, among other strong statements in support of individual rights, we are individuals. The freedom to read is guaranteed by the Constitution. Those with faith in free people will stand firm on these constitutional guarantees of essential rights and will exercise the responsibilities that accompany these rights. That includes parents. I am a Downers Grove resident who is proud that our library has faith in free people. A quick history lesson. The first version of a Library Bill of Rights was created in 1938 by Forrest Spalding, who was the director of the Des Moines Public Library. He wrote the document to address mounting concerns over the growing intolerance, suppression of free speech, and censorship affecting the rights of minorities and individuals that Spalding observed in Nazi Germany and in the United States itself. He presented it before the Des Moines Library Board, and the board adopted it as a proclamation that they would not give in to pressures to censor items from their collection. 1 year later, the revised document was adopted by the American Library Association. It did not come from ALA. From its origins as a document to address Nazi book burning, suppression of free expression, and political dissent, it has been used to campaign against McCarthyism and discrimination on the basis of race, sex, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and immigration status. It is firmly rooted in the First Amendment and the profession's commitment to protecting intellectual freedom and protecting the rights of all library users. I am grateful to this board, this director, and this staff for protecting my First Amendment rights as well as everyone else in this room. Thank you for your common sense approach.
My name is Sasha Koptic. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. I'm here to show my support for the board and the library and the ALA Bill of Rights. And just to further what she was saying, the adoption of the Library Bill of Rights was in 1939, and it was introduced with the following statement. Today, indications in many parts of the world point to growing intolerance, suppression of free speech, and censorship affecting the rights of minorities and individuals. I'm stunned that words written in 1939 in the face of fascism and Nazism resonate so strongly today, and I fully support what you're doing. Thank you.
A reminder to keep it down for these people.
Do we have other comments tonight on agenda items? All right. Moving on to item number 7, public comments on other library business.
My name is Jim Wool. When we requested to paint the library's windows to honor Memorial Day, we were told by Julie Milovic and Jen Rajewski that there was a standardized procedure to be followed by all groups that requested to paint the windows. We were told that we had to submit an email request seeking permission and explaining what we would paint on the windows. This was a reasonable request and we obliged. However, this simple request to paint the library's windows became mired in unnecessary controversy, which uncovered Julie and Jen's dishonesty. Their dishonesty caused me to be suspicious of this supposed standardized procedure. I asked Julie and Jen for the 2022 and 2023 emails by the group who paints the windows in the month of June. After all, Julie and Jen said that all groups had to abide by this formal process. I did not receive the requested emails. It was only after I submitted a FOIA request that I received the emails for 2022, but I did not receive the 2023 emails that I also requested in the FOIA. Upon reading the emails, I understood why Julie and Jen were so reluctant to share the emails with me. The group in June never sent any emails to Julie or Jen requesting permission to paint the windows or explaining what they would paint. Instead, the emails showed a coordinated effort by Cindy Catry, who is the library's marketing and communications director, Jeannie Sorelli, who is the public relations specialist for the town of Downers Grove, David Humphreys, a member of this board, and Catherine Diaz, the co-chair of EQDG, as to how they would promote Pride Month. Not one email was addressed to Julie or Jen, and not one email requested permission to paint the windows. In other words, this formal process of requesting to paint the windows was only established when we asked to paint the windows to honor Memorial Day. Julie and Jen, both of you lied about the procedure to paint the windows. This whole ugly episode has exposed Julie's behavior and Jen's behavior as unprofessional and disgusting. There is nothing political about Memorial Day, but Julie and Jen, both of you, made it political. We just wanted to honor the men and women who died for this country. Julie and Jen, you were worse than deceitful. You lied, and as a result, you made our men and women in uniform who died a political issue. The people who gave their lives in defense of our liberties allow us to have these conversations today. Allow me and others to freely address this board. Why do other groups' messages take precedence over our fallen men and women in uniform? In the library's framework for releasing anti-hate statements, one stated goal is to model behavior that we would like to see in the community. Is lying a behavior you would like to see in our community? This is shameful behavior from two people who hold positions of public trust in this community. I am baffled, but sadly, not surprised by Julie's behavior and Jen's behavior. Your true character is on display. Julie and Jen, both of you are liars. Do the rest of you stand by their behavior?
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Dice. I'm the co-chair of Equality Downers Grove. My co-chair, Frank Cody, is over here. I just wanted to address, first of all, my father was in the armed services. I know what the armed services do. And I have great respect for the armed services and everything that they've done for this country. I want to say, as someone who's worked in an organization before, well, I feel like I'm talking to everybody, but my back is to everybody. Yeah, so as someone who's worked in organizations, I know that policies change, and there are new policies that are introduced. Last year, there was not a policy for painting windows. This year there was, and we wrote, we were advised of such a policy for the pride windows. We wrote and had our artist who was assigned to the library windows describe, she had to describe what she was going to paint. That was then given to the library staff to approve or disapprove. They approved that design. The words had to be approved as well as the visual. And so I think the policy changed. We were observant of that policy and complied with it. I think last year there wasn't this policy, but policies are introduced for good reason. And so I just wanted to sort of straighten out those facts and to say we had, to thank the library for being a good supporter of all of us, including, and I appreciated the window that was up in May. And I think the library does a good job of representing all of us. Thank you.
Eileen Breiner, resident. My monikers are Catholic woman, and I too am proud of who I am. Please again give us an update to the personnel matter that the library is involved in. What's the current stage that it's in? Investigation, arbitration, litigation, or settlement? Thank you in advance for that information. Tonight I'd like to address the land acknowledgement statement that's right after the Pledge of Allegiance and appears prominently on the website with more that can be read. In listening to the August 2021 board meeting where you approved the land acknowledgement statement, you agreed that this was a living document that could be altered. I'm here tonight to ask you to amend the statement in two ways. In paragraph 6, it reads, the federal government and Catholic Church officials coerce Native families into sending their children to live and attend classes at boarding schools without visitation. In your cited materials, it says, the federal Indian border school policy has been a collaboration of the Christian churches and the federal government since its earliest inception. Several Protestant faiths are named, but not Catholic. In 1872, the Board of Indian Commissioners allotted 72 Indian agencies to various denominations. The Catholic Church received 7% of the students. 7%. That's hardly a majority. On page 5 of this same document, it reads, the Catholics, having been initially excluded from the board, argued fervently that the children should have the freedom to choose their religion. I demand that paragraph 6 of the land acknowledgement be changed to reflect the information in the cited materials and an apology be given to the Catholic Church. I would also like to add an article to your resources following the extended statement. The article is from the Washington Free Beacon, June 12, 2023, titled, Our Financial Loss is Nothing to Celebrate. Navajo protests Biden's ban of drilling on their sacred land, by Colin Anderson. I'll leave a copy with the secretary. It reads, "Go home," Native protesters tell Interior Secretary Deb Haaland ahead of Sunday event. Members of the Navajo Nation blocked a Biden administration official from entering a New Mexico National Park on Sunday, where the administration planned to celebrate its ban on oil and gas leasing in the area. At issue was Haaland's June 2nd decision to ban for 20 years oil and gas leasing within 10 miles of Chaco Cultural National Historical Park, a move she said would protect a sacred place that holds deep meaning for the indigenous people. Many Navajo Nation landowners, however, disagreed, as they depend on the revenue they earn from leasing the land to oil and gas companies. Haaland planned to celebrate the ban at her Sunday event, prompting condemnation from Navajo President Boo Nygren. The financial and economic losses that are impacting many Navajo families as a result of the Secretary's recent land withdrawal are nothing to celebrate, Nygren said in a statement. As leaders of the Navajo Nation, we support the Navajo allottees who oppose the withdrawal of these public lands. Navajo Nation leaders say Haaland, whose office declined to comment, failed to adequately consult them before issuing the 20-year oil ban on gas and oil drilling. But Haaland did provide access to her daughter's green group, Pueblo Action Alliance, which works to end both oil and gas production as well as, quote, imperial capitalism. Haaland last year met with the group's executive director, who referred to the Biden appointee as Auntie Deb. Haaland's daughter, meanwhile, represented the group on a December Washington, D.C. lobbying trip aimed at securing the oil and gas ban around the historical park. Just months later, Haaland's daughter got her wish.
You're at 5 minutes.
Quickly, I have one more line. As you can see, after 200 years, the government is still dictating to the indigenous people. I'll leave a copy with the secretary. Thank you for your considerate attention.
Hello, my name is Warner Keonkin. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. And I am really proud of our library and the welcoming community that it fosters. So I'd like to make the remarks tonight to the board as well as to the audience. What I'd like to begin with is that when the board begins, you always make reference to the indigenous people. I am not from a nation of indigenous people, but indigenous people are one of us. Several weeks ago, we celebrated Juneteenth. I am not black, but the African American is one of us. As we end Pride Month, I acknowledge what Downers Grove and the library has done. I'm not gay, but the LGBT community is one of us. In our community, we have synagogues, mosques, Buddhist and Hindu temples. These are not my faith, but the religion is one of us. I am not Hispanic, Asian, Arab, or from indigenous tribes from any of those countries, but each of those persons is one of us. A person who is homeless, indigent, or disabled. I am not one of those people, but they are also one of us. So what actually is DEI, which has come under conversation so much during these board meetings? It is me, my fellow European heritage persons, and my community learning about the backgrounds and experiences of people who do not look like me. And the way to do this is by reading the books at the library, educating our children, and welcoming people who are not like me. Our community also needs to have more events like Pride Month, Juneteenth, and others. And we need to begin talking to one another. Over the weekend, there were 2 demonstrations in Atlanta outside of a synagogue, or 2 synagogues, with Nazi flags and outfits. With the 4th of July bearing down on us, I would like to leave us with these thoughts. Let us honestly say, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Robin Tryloff. I've lived in Downers Grove for more than 30 years, and I've served on the Downers Grove Public Library Foundation Board of Directors since 2017. First, I want to address the accusation that the ALA is Marxist. It is not. It is a body of professionals that represents the profession and leads and maintains its standards. ALA is governed by an elected council, which is its policy-making body, and an executive board, which acts for the council in the administration of established policies and programs. The board delegates management of the association's day-to-day operation to the executive director. It is in our best interest for our library to benefit from the best practices and standards the profession offers, and that requires affiliation with the ALA. I'm pleased to see that the library's revised bylaws, which will be voted on tonight, include in Article 3 governance that the American and Illinois Library Association's standards and the ALA Bill of Rights provide guidance to the board and are adopted when required by law. We benefit enormously from the programs and services state funding offers, funds we would lose if our library disassociated with ALA, which leads me to the question of whether the library needs this funding. My answer, absolutely. The library is a place where people who can't afford a home computer and internet connection can access them. That serves as an information commons and gateway to global collections, supports informal self-education and civic and cultural activities of groups and organizations, and so much more. In a library, what services or help you get does not depend on how much money you can spend. It's a place where if you need help, all you have to do is ask. In short, libraries, and the Downers Grove Public Library especially, are bastions of this country's founding principles of liberty and democracy.
Okay, just a moment before we proceed with the next comment. We are at our 30-minute limit for public comment. Do we have a motion to extend that time? All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of extending the public comment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we've extended the time. Please proceed.
I'll be brief. I'm Janet Winningham. I'm a Downers Grove resident. And I want to congratulate the board and thank you for the legacy wall exhibit. It is informative, educational, very moving in many respects, and beautifully presented. Folks I talked to who have seen it have agreed. It is well worth the view. I hope the caliber of this exhibit will be the standard for displays and activities going forward. And the formality of it, the presentation is so wonderful that it's beyond criticism. It's just fabulous. And some of the other activities are maybe a little ill-thought or ill-advised in my opinion, but I think that the standards that we have for excellence at this library are displayed in the legacy wall, and I, again, thank you for that.
Here it is. Hi, my name is Dorothy Crawford. I live in Downers Grove. I have lived here forever, since I was 24. Anyways, I just want to make a statement, and the statement is this. I have no right to pick anybody else's books. As a teacher, I always said, you do not have to I have no right to choose your books. I have no right to make a judgment on your books. Those are the things that you wish to read. I want you to read. That's what I want you to do, is I want you to read. So all I want to say is that I don't have a right to tell anybody else what to read. I think the library should be full of all different types of ideas, points of view, and not one way or the other, because I think the library is what gives us all the ability to grow and develop and not stick in a place where we are. And I will not tell anybody else what they have the right to read, and I don't think anybody else has the right to tell me, my children, and my grandchildren what it is they will read or what it is they will not be able to read in a public library. If you want to go to a library that only has certain kind of books, great, start that kind of library. If you want to go into a library that has these kind of books, start that kind of library. If you want to go to a communal library of a community that includes everybody in this entire room, then you come to this library and you find the books that you are interested in. And then you give them to your children, and you don't give your children the ones you don't like. It's real simple. You don't take the books off the shelf. You put the books on the shelf and you let your children read them, or you choose to reduce their reading. That is your prerogative as a parent, as a grandparent, as an aunt and an uncle. But it is not anybody else's prerogative to tell me and mine what we can and we cannot read. I don't make excuses for what I read, and nobody in here should ever make an excuse for what you read. Reading is everything. You cannot take it away from anybody. And you as a library need to stand up and say so, no matter what anybody says. You've got to have the courage. You've got to do it because you know it's right. Nobody has a right to take it away from us. Anybody out here who wants to take something away should not. They should just not let their kids do it. Look at your kids. See what they're doing. If you don't like what they're reading, tell them so. Don't make it my responsibility or their responsibility to watch out for your child because you have a certain set of ideas. It's great you got them, but it's your responsibility to watch your child, not theirs. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Hi, I'm David Deal. I'm a Downers Grove resident, and I too was completely moved by the legacy wall. It was one of the most powerful and educational pieces of information I've seen in any library anywhere. I was especially appreciative of the incredibly rich, accurate information about transgender people in that exhibit. For example, the history of two-spirit transgender people in Native American culture. We live at a time when there are more than 500 anti-transgender laws being proposed across this country, up from 200 something in 2022. That type of hostility against transgender people is being motivated by misinformation coming from hate groups, coming from people who fear the other, coming from people who fear what they don't understand. Sadly, that's our tradition in our country, going back centuries since our founding. One of the less likable things about our country that I love. But for every person who fears the other and wants to besmirch the other and attack the other, fortunately, we have people who also love this country, who want to spread accurate information, who want to shed light on the other, make them part of us, which they are. And I'm especially appreciative of what you're doing to educate the community with accurate information about the transgender community, as you've done in your legacy wall. I really thank you for doing that in a very respectful way that teaches everyone in our community, and I encourage everyone to check out that legacy wall to learn, because that's why we come to a library. Thank you.
control what their kids read. Okay, I grew up in this library. I raised my children in this library. And when I grew up in this library, when I came here, my parents didn't have to worry about what I might be exposed to because the library maintained appropriate materials for children. They didn't have pornography and lewd books available to children. My parents didn't have to worry about that when I was at the library. Parents today have to be concerned about what kids are going to be exposed to in this library. And you people are painting with a really broad brush because nobody's talking about banning books. We are talking about appropriate placement of materials. I don't care what perverted material anybody wants to read here, but I don't want it available to children. Thank you.
Sorry, I beat you to it. I don't have any notes. My name's Mary Versalino, and I'm a longtime resident here. And I am very concerned that in the media and hate groups that librarians have been disrespected. And now I will have to say, now in terms of pornography for children, to me that's just total misinformation. I have looked in the children's department, and I have yet to see any of the librarians strolling around looking for young people and putting pornography in their backpacks. So all I can say is, I think the librarians are a very noble profession, and they deserve all the respect that we can give them. Thank you.
I wanted to, I'm sorry, Ed Pollack, I've been a Downers Grove resident for 38 years now, a taxpayer here, so I have a strong sense of ownership of this library and care a lot about what's happening here. I wanted to build on some of the past, some of the recent comments that were made. In fact, in particular, I was at the Legacy Wall, and there was a name on there that had particular meaning to me, and that was Alan Turing. I got a degree in computer engineering, and Alan Turing was a giant in the industry. He came up with the concept of a Turing machine and proved a lot of fundamental theories. He came up with there's something called the Turing test, which is relevant for AI, which is a very hot issue today, and he did this 70 years ago. So he's just a giant in history. But more than that, during World War II, because he was such a brilliant mathematician, if you see the movie The Imitation Game, I won't take you through the whole thing, but this I think is very relevant here. The Germans were winning the war because they had a code system that we could not break. He was brought in as part of a team of people, and he led the effort that cracked the code. He is credited with enabling things like the D-Day invasion. He turned the tide of the war. So he should be a war hero. After the war ended, he was arrested. His crime was that he was gay. They sentenced him to chemical castration and gave him a lot of drugs that just messed up his mind. He couldn't think straight. He was just completely lost. He ended up committing suicide. He died at 41. A giant industry dead at 41. A horrible, immoral thing that they did to him. A war hero who gave us the world we've got today. And this was his thanks. Thank you for your service. What's relevant about that here is that was all considered normal. Nobody thought that was something odd. And so I think things like the Legacy Wall, like the policies that you're doing here to make sure that this is welcoming to everybody. This is so important because there might be a young Alan Turing in Downers Grove someplace, and if he feels like he's welcome and he can come here and learn things, who knows what we're going to get from those kind of people in the future. Small-minded bigots that try to bully and destroy people have no place in our community. And so I want the board to continue to resist people that are fighting to promote bigotry, and please continue to keep this open for everybody.
Gorsuch, and I'm a longtime Downers resident. And I'm going to be very brief. I am going to change the total subject and talk more about the circulation department. I am here again, the same thing about last month, for the ability of the circulation department is not able to switch hours within the department. And the question I have is there an increase in sick calls in that department? Because they're using sick time instead of being able to switch. Is that really a good thing, to use your sick time for something like having to get your flat tire changed? That doesn't make sense. With the winter coming, people may have used a lot of their sick time, and they're going to come to work sick. Is that a good thing? I don't think so. I know most of the people here wouldn't want to be exposed to that. And this is a poorly thought out policy for everyone. Also, the circ department is the only department that can't switch. The other departments in the library can. Is that right? They should not be singled out because they're a large department. Is it a good thing for their morale? I don't think so. I'm also curious to see about turnover numbers in that department. Have people left, or are they happily moved to another department that they don't have this situation? In this employment climate, isn't it important that we hire and keep quality of employees? Are these policies working to that end? You have the ability to rectify this situation. You need to do that. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? All right, thank you, everyone. All right, next up, we wanted to go ahead and move our presentation from Van McGarry up prior to new business. Do we have a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion to do that.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move the Adult and Teen Services Manager, Van McGarry's presentation up. For all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, Van, you are up.
And Van will be talking to us about electronic resources and about the Adult and Teen Services Department. As some of you who've been coming to our board meetings for a while know, we do have our departmental managers come on a rotating basis to talk about what their departments do and what kinds of things they have going on. And so Van is doing that. She is also giving us this presentation on digital materials as part of our budget process, because she and her fellow librarians are suggesting a large increase to our electronic materials budget. So, take it away, Van.
Hello everyone, my name is Van McGarry, and I'm the manager of the Adult and Teen Services Department, also known as ATS. I've been with the library for almost 5 years now, and I took over as manager in late November of last year after my previous role as assistant manager. I'm super excited to be here to discuss with you electronic resources, particularly ebooks and e-audiobooks. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for that information, so I'm going to start with that part of the presentation, and then I will follow up with more information about the ATS department afterwards. All right. And I want to also thank Assistant Manager Amanda Kling for helping prepare the information in these slides. So the stuff that we're going to cover today is the overview of the budgets for ebooks and e-audiobooks, and the need for an increase in the budget because of growth in demand. I'll also talk about lending models as well as cost breakdowns for these digital materials, give you some information on the hold and wait times, as well as some information on ebooks and e-audiobooks that came from our strategic planning findings book. And then last but not least, our budget request for this coming fiscal year. So this snapshot will take us back to 2018. In the second column, we see the budget numbers that have changed over the years for ebooks, and this is for Overdrive, or for folks who use the app for Overdrive, it's called Libby, as well as Cloud Library, abbreviated CL. In the third column here, we've got the e-audiobook budgets. We don't purchase e-audiobooks for Cloud Library, so that's why there's only one number there. And then the next column over is the total budget for Overdrive and Cloud Library, and then also some of you may be familiar with Hoopla. We also have that digital service as well. So as you can see, we have been, increasing our budget over the years, and unfortunately, it's just not enough for the demands of these services.
Leanne, can you give us a quick kind of breakdown of the difference between Overdrive and Cloud Library? Kind of where those two numbers are different.
They're different because, so they're completely different platforms, and they have very different catalogs or offerings. Overdrive, we are part of a larger consortium, and so as those of you who use it know, there's a much larger library or selection of materials to utilize, to select from, I should say. And so there's a lot more users of Overdrive. And so we have a lot more demand in that platform, and so we spend a lot more in that area, a lot more holds, etc. Cloud Library is a different app or different service. We don't have as many users in that platform. Something that is really utilized in Cloud Library, however, is something called CloudLink. It's linked to District 58, where the students can use Cloud Library simply with their student ID number. They don't even have to have a library card. All of their devices that they get from the school already have Cloud Library on there. There's the materials, the digital materials from the school is linked to the library's Cloud Library catalog, as well as some other libraries that are linked into the Cloud Library group as well. So there's two different digital consortiums, if you will. All right. Any other questions? Please stop me as I'm going through this. So year over year comparison. So we saw the budget comparison. Now let's look at the checkouts. So 2018 we had just under 37,000 checkouts for Overdrive, and as you can see, checkouts in Cloud Library not nearly as high. And then we see a jump in 2019, another jump in 2020, again 2021, 2022, and then we're on pace now for almost 68,000 in 2023. This was back in, as of May 15th. I looked at the numbers again, and we actually are surpassing this original projection. I kept the numbers from May 15th because those are the numbers that we used for our budget request, and I didn't want to change all the numbers. But, and then on the right-hand side here, you can see the growth that we've been seeing. You can see this large number here, 2020. During the pandemic, we had a huge surge, and that's, you'll see in the next couple slides, we are just continuing on that rise. So this snapshot in the green box, I just want to draw your attention to that. So our checkout growth between 2018 to now, we have grown 84.4% in checkouts for Overdrive, and we've dropped in Cloud Library, but that's also related to the fact that we've taken money out of Cloud Library and put it more into Overdrive, as you see in the previous slide. And so we've increased the budget for Overdrive, but not for Cloud Library. So we don't see as much growth in Cloud Library as you see in Libby, and as I said, Libby, we have a lot more users. However, even though the checkout growth has increased by 84.4%, the budget has only grown by 36.4%, and you will see the problems that this has caused. Similarly, for e-audiobooks, we have similar trends where the checkouts back in 2018, 17,500, and now we're looking this year on pace for over 49,000. And the growth from between 2018 and 2023, the number of checkouts have grown by almost 181%, And even though we really try to increase the budget's only increased by 99%. So, something else that is causing additional problems to this is the fact that ebooks and e-audiobooks are very, very expensive. So there's, on top of the cost, there's all these different types of lending models, or the way that publishers sell the licenses to us for these electronic materials. So something that's called MA, or metered access, there's the definitions at the bottom there. That means that a title, so the license, will expire from the collection after a certain number of months or checkouts. So a lot more publishers are moving towards this metered access model, 12 months, 24 months, or 100 checkouts. So there used to be a lot more what's called OCOU, one copy, one user, where each title can only be checked out by one person at a time, and then the title will remain in the collection permanently. This was great, but the publishers are moving away from that. And as you can see here, in 2018, the top 50 most popular titles, 56% were available as OCOU, one copy, one user, permanent collection or permanent title. And April 2023, only 3 are available as OCOU. So more publishers just want us to keep rebuying these titles. Expire, rebuy, expire, rebuy. It's not dropping as quickly in e-audiobooks, but you can see e-audiobooks, the one copy, one user copies, are very expensive. And so we're looking at over $100 for an OCOU e-audiobook copy. And so they're still making those available, but you're gonna pay very high for those. So giving you like an idea for the current top 5 New York Times bestsellers right now, so 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand, Overdrive, there's not even an OCOU or permanent title copy. It's $75, it's only good for 24 months. The print version, so the hard copy, physical copy, is only $16.95 with our discount through our vendor. The e-audiobook, again, there's no permanent copy, it's $65, and then the physical audio copy is $35. Lessons in Chemistry, pretty similar there. The digital version is always going to be a lot more expensive than the physical version. So Happy Place, Crosstown, and then Covenant of Water are the other titles. And then as you can see, Covenant of Water, the digital audiobooks, we're looking at over $100 for the only 2 options that the publishers offer. So current holds, okay. So because of the expensiveness of ebooks and e-audiobooks, because of the licenses that keep expiring, and because we have not been able to keep up with the budget, we're seeing numbers like this. The average wait period as of today right now is about 53 days. That's the average. We have a hold that's still out there since 2020. That is the oldest hold. Right now, e-audiobooks, as you can see there, we have almost 1,700 holds on 336 titles. Ebooks, and so these are on the left-hand side, what's called Advantage titles. I'll explain what Advantage means on the next slide in just a bit. But I want to draw your attention to some of the notes at the bottom here. Because of our limited budget, we can't just buy as many as we would like to, as many copies or licenses. So for ebooks, we typically need at least 6 Downers Grove holds to purchase if there are no copies in the consortium. This is awful. This is actually better. It's down from 12 before. And then, as it says here, if there are 8 consortium copies, then we wait for a ratio to be about 8 before we buy an Advantage copy. And so e-audiobooks, we've gotten it down to about 4 holds if there are no copies. And that means no copies. There's people that are just waiting out there, and their holds will never be filled because there are no copies owned by anyone in the consortium, including us. and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And we cannot buy these licenses because we do not have the money for it. So as it says here, there are holds, right, 674 titles with no copies. Advantage, which is what we own, that's called Advantage, meaning that our copies go to our patrons first. 503 have just a hold from one patron, and 171 have more than 2 DG holds. Okay, so want to draw your attention to this graphic here. This was supplied by our vendor, our Rec from Overdrive, showing the trend in holds over time, starting back in 2016, and then as you can see, it rises here in 2020, and it is, really spiked in 2021, and then this is where we're at today, and it is just continuing on this slope. It kind of zigzags a little bit, but this demand for ebooks and e-audiobooks is here to stay. It's not going to drop back down. And then, as I mentioned there, so the current wait time right now for an average wait time is almost 2 months. And those of you who use Libby, you know this. When you place a hold and it says, oh, available in 3 months or whatever, this is why. So how does our library compare to other libraries in the consortium? So looking back at the latest 12 months, we are growing at a higher or faster rate than all the other libraries, than all the libraries in the consortium. So that includes our growth and plus everyone else's growth. So unique users with checkouts, year-over-year growth, we are growing at 18% versus 15% for the entire consortium. Unique new users, we're growing at 43%. And then checkouts year-over-year growth, we're growing at 18% compared to the entire consortium. So we often hear this at all libraries, digital books or ebooks and e-audiobooks. The demand is rising. Our demand is growing at a faster rate here than all the libraries in the consortium. So taking a look at some of the popular titles that have long wait times right now. Lessons in Chemistry, Bonnie Garmis. So this book actually came out April 5th of last year. And these are the current numbers that we pulled just today. So there are over a year, this book's been out for over a year, 72 active holds with 7 suspended. So we have 7 Advantage copies, as it says at the bottom there, as you can see. Advantage means that it's our copies that we own, and it will fulfill our patrons' holds first. There's 5 consortium copies. Consortium means that it's copies owned for all the libraries, copies in the system, and it will go towards the holds in the order of the holds that are placed. And then there's 14 Advantage Plus copies, which means that they are owned by other libraries in the consortium, and they will go to those libraries' patrons first, and once all of those libraries' patrons holds have been filled, then it will go out and fill other libraries, including us and whoever else. And so, as you can see here, for just this one title alone, we have had 228 checkouts from CPC. CPC is another lending model that ebooks and e-audiobooks that publishers of ebooks and e-audiobooks utilize. It's cost per checkout. So instead of having a license for a book for a certain amount of time, it's paid per use. And it's very expensive to do it this way, and not even all titles are available this way. It's a very random selection that are offered this way. And we've also purchased metered access 12-month licenses for this. And so far, 2 already have expired because this book has been out for over a year, and the licenses are only good for 12 months. So 2 have expired. 2 more are going to be expiring soon for this. And so far, this one title, ebooks, we've spent over $1,500, and the holds are still at 72. We're still trying to get through the holds list. E-audiobooks, we're still at 45 holds for a book that's been out for well over a year. We've bought 6 Advantage copies. We still have our oldest hold is 8 weeks out. Ebook, oldest hold, 9 weeks out. We've already had 209 checkouts. Again, CPC, total spent so far, sorry about the formatting, not sure what happened there, but we've already spent almost $1,000 on this. One title, one copy's expired, next one's gonna be expiring in about a month. And so we just have to keep rebuying and rebuying, and we just cannot keep up with the wait. So, closer, deeper look at this title, still the same book, Lessons in Chemistry. So as you can see here, 72 holds on 7 copies. This is over 10 holds per copy. The e-audiobook, we're at almost 8 holds per copy. To give you an idea of how terrible the service is, that we don't feel good about, for physical materials, we aim for 3 holds per copy. And if it's more than that, then we buy more copies, and then to try to keep, that wait time at a reasonable minimum. Digital, however, the standard is 10 holds per copy. If there's 70 holds, we try to buy seven copies. And then that leads to this crazy wait, as you can see there. And we are trying to bridge this gap of our customer service level for physical materials and for digital materials, because the digital service is not acceptable right now. It's really, really not good. So to give you an idea of a nonfiction title, Spare by Prince Harry came out earlier this year. So this title is not as popular now, as you can imagine, but it was. It definitely took a chunk out of our budget for a while there. Ebooks, as you can see here, similar thing. We had to buy multiple copies. We tried to get the line down for cost per checkout, CPC model. And so ebooks, we spent over $500 on this. E-audiobooks, people really wanted to listen to this one, and this one we've spent almost $1,500 on. Again, so just these 2 titles, and there are thousands and thousands of titles that people are waiting on. So current wait time, similar issue again here. We've got almost 8.5 ratio, and then 9 ratio here, and we are just not able to get those wait times and those ratios lower. So this is what a patron would see right now if they were to go into the Libby app and place a hold, because that's what we did. We went in, we did cancel a hold, but we went in and placed a hold, and that's what you see. All right, so high demand titles as of today. Right now, this is just for our library, our patrons. Ebooks with at least 10 holds that we do own. There's 79 titles, 1,600 plus holds. Ebooks with at least 4 holds that we don't even own, 57 of them, almost 300 holds. E-audiobooks with at least 10 holds that we do own, 53, over 1,000 holds. E-audiobooks with at least 4 holds that we don't own, currently 9 with 38 holds. So I also want to draw your attention to the feedback that we received from the strategic planning survey that so many of you participated in. We're really grateful for that. People have mentioned digital circulation is limited by the limitations of digital collections. Hold times are long. We saw a lot of this. I love that the Downers Grove Library is part of my suburban library network, as it gives us access to so many books. I do wish digital offerings were more extensive. I almost exclusively use Libby for digital content. Too often I find books aren't available because of extremely long wait lists. By the time I get the book, I've lost interest. I mean, it's been so many months, that's not surprising, and this is something we really want to improve and fix. Something else that people had given us feedback on was how important digital content is in our library service. So it was ranked quite high here. As you can see, it was ranked number 7 digital content among what people said that it would be. I think it was, I can't remember exactly the wording, is must have or need to have, and nice to have was 97% there. And so people felt like this was an important service. Oh, here it is. Must have and nice to have. Hey, I think I got it. So again, ranked 7, above some of the other things that came up a lot in conversation, but digital content, downloadable books, magazines, movies, etc., was right up there. So this brings us to our budget request. We are looking to, as I said, to improve our service with our digital materials. So we are looking to have a significant increase over our budget from last year. So 2023, we are currently at $36,000 for ebooks. We're looking to bump this up significantly, and this is for ebooks and e-audiobooks. I'm going to go back quickly. Those numbers were obtained from the green snapshot. If we were to match the growth in checkouts with the budget growth, that gives us what we would get in the budget request. So if we got the budget growth to match this 84.4% in checkouts, to hopefully meet the demands, that gives us the numbers on that slide that I will jump back to. Similarly, if the e-audio book budget growth would match this 180.7% growth, as opposed to where we're at now, that gets us to these numbers here. So that's where we got those numbers. And then this would tentatively bring our 2024 total budget request for adult and teen services to 3.8% over 2023. There is an asterisk there, as you can see. So this is with moving $22,800 for kids' databases over to children's services. Right now, our department manages and oversees databases for the entire library, but we just feel like it makes more sense for the children's services to manage the kids' databases so that they can determine which ones they utilize most and want to enhance or not keep anymore, which ones they want to add, etc., deal with any troubleshooting issues. So, taking into account if we were to have kept all the databases under ATS with our other budget increases that we're looking for, then the total budget request would actually be 7.5% higher than it was last year. And again, the majority of that is because of the need for increased ebook and e-audiobook funding. So, do want to point out, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what does this mean regarding the physical collections budget? So the print materials amount, we are requesting much less of an increase, only 3.3%. In 2023, there was actually a 7.2% increase for print materials. But this coming year, we're actually only asking for a 3.3% increase over last year. This is with the addition of adding 2 new collections, Rising Reads and RPGs. The big increase there in that 3.3% primarily comes from increases in printing and processing costs, as well as increases in our periodical subscriptions. And then for AB materials, you can see here we're actually continuing to decrease our budget for physical AB materials. So that's your DVDs, music CDs, physical audiobooks, because I'm sure you're well aware those materials are declining in circulation, and so we're continuing to also match that trend. So we are bringing down our AB materials budget. Again, we've been drastically reducing those over the years, continuing that. And this is with adding our 4K Blu-rays as well as updating our binge boxes, but we're still trying to be, as responsible with that budget as well. Any questions about any of that information? No, it was a lot. Yes.
So it seems like some of these digital publishers basically have us back into a corner.
Yes.
A corner in the market. Do you know what other libraries, so like we're not alone, right? Other libraries are doing this. Do you know what other libraries are kind of doing? Are they seeing similar increases in the budget? How are other organizations doing this?
So there are some lawsuits that have happened against publishers to try to get them to reduce the pricing on these electronic titles, but all of them have been thrown out so far.
There is, however, a law that is on the governor's desk, a bill right now that we hope he will sign, that would allow the state library to negotiate pricing for ebooks and e-audios statewide for our libraries. And so we're very, very hopeful that the governor signs that into law and that we are able to do something about this, because this is crazy.
I have a question to that. When you're projecting your budget for 2024, what do you know about what inflation there might be and what the library is being charged for all these things? Have there been any projections on that?
Yes, are you talking about just digital materials or for all of our?
Primarily the digital, since that model
Yes,
is
so
so odd.
it's not going to be a perfect solution as far as now we're going to just be able to get all these hold times down, especially because not just inflation on the prices, but they're going to be changing the models even more. There's going to be, even more 12-month licenses as opposed to these perpetual OCOU licenses, or even 24 months. There's going to be more of these shorter-term licenses, and then so that's going to be causing us to spend more money on the same titles again. So it's not going to be this magic solution, but it is definitely going to be a move in the direction of getting folks what they want in a more timely manner. Yes.
I just had a quick question. Do they ever offer something where, despite it being a 12-month checkout period, that they would allow multiple licenses for that one price? Like a higher price, but it's unlimited licenses?
Unlimited licenses? No. No, that would be nice. So, yes.
Or 10 licenses for one price?
No.
Just one.
No.
One of the things that occurs to me is that if there's a backlog of 70 checkout, like 70 holds,
Mm-hmm.
and people, like one of the feedback items is, by the time I get my hold, I've lost interest.
Mm-hmm.
Does the library have access to they've got access to that backlog, like who wants those materials? Can we do anything like, hey, we've got books on the shelf that you can take, you want it now, because that's a cost we've already expended, and if we can chip away at those backlogs.
So you're talking about offering people the physical copy?
Yeah.
So we get that all the time. Folks will ask us like, oh, whatever's faster. If I can get the physical copy, the large print, the audio, the ebook, whatever's faster. And so we do get that a lot when people will just say whatever.
But those are probably self-initiated. Like those are people going, oh man, 6 months for this book is, I'm maybe pretty bored. I wonder if there's a physical copy. I'm wondering if there's anything proactive that the library could do to notify people like, hey, I noticed that you're going to be waiting 6 months for this book. We got these on the shelf.
We can do something. We can look at our marketing communications department and say, hey, we have multiple formats that are available. Here's our catalog. Let us know. And then with the catalog tutorial that we have, if people want to check and see. But there isn't a way to, for these thousands and thousands of holds to be able to contact each person each time a physical copy is.
It would have to be.
So it would be, we can let people know that, this is an easy way to check if you are looking for something, at quicker time, this, physical copy might be faster.
So in the interest of time, we're just going to have, Van, if there's trustees that have questions, we'll go ahead and proceed with those. And then if any public comments, if anyone wants to direct any questions to Van via email or website, then we can do that. But just to kind of keep the meeting going.
Van, first of all, wonderful presentation, well researched, well presented. Good job. Thank you for the thorough handling of it. This is a pretty fascinating topic and also really concerning. This could turn into a bottomless spend. I mean, we'll get to the point where we could fund a Kindle Unlimited subscription for every library card holder if,
Well,
on a
that's
comparative basis, right?
She's like, I have numbers on that.
Something that our strategic planning consultant did mention was that, you know, he has observed that other libraries do eventually reach a plateau, and we do see here that it is starting to kind of level out. As far as on this chart here, we just haven't been able to meet that next step up as
Yeah.
far as where the
I mean, when you
demand
see
is.
numbers like we're spending $1,500 on one title, that's mind-blowing,
You know,
compared to physical print. I guess.
there is that shift though. We're
Yeah.
buying fewer physical copies. 'Cause
Yeah,
there is this,
I know,
this
you know,
digital
my,
shift.
I would have guessed that the shift from physical to digital would have been a cost savings, not a cost increase. So this
The cost-
flies in the face of like what I think what most people would assume.
The cost and with the inflation and then also the rising costs in processing and shipping, as I
Sure.
mentioned, with our vendors, like even if we are buying fewer copies, but these additional charges that we are incurring, unfortunately, we are not able to reduce those charges further.
Yeah. So my question is, the numbers you present, are they just for ATS or is that total library?
So these numbers here are for ATS.
Okay.
We don't have quite the demand in kids
Okay, yeah,
for
that makes
these,
sense.
for these digital materials. So the budget numbers.
Well, they couldn't
and
tear
then,
the pages then.
but they'll get
Or
there.
chew on it. Do rules.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we do with this? I think your budget ask is entirely reasonable. What does that let us do? Like, do we reduce the threshold on buying additional copies? Do we expand
Yes.
the collection? What's the intent?
Yeah, so as it says here, physical versus digital copies, right now physical, for every 3 holds, we buy, you know, a copy, and so and then for digital, right now, we can only buy a copy for every 10 holds.
Right.
So we're definitely going to try to buy more extra copies to get that
Do we
ratio
know
down.
precisely, are we able to model what we can do with that extra money? Like, we get it down from 6 to 4? Or we expand the number of titles from
We
X to
wouldn't be able
Y?
to model it, unfortunately, because of all the different licenses, because an audiobook can cost $47, or there was an audiobook recently, the only option was $135. And
So this has increased the budget and we'll spend up to that budget and we'll
And
do
we're
whatever.
gonna-
Exactly, that's where we're at now, we're spending right at our budget, and that's the wait time that we are at with our budget, where
So,
we're at.
like I said, I think the budget ask is reasonable, but this is something over the long term we've got to get a handle on.
Yes, and the goal is to get the digital copy and the physical copy to approximately the same holds number that triggers a
I mean,
buy.
it's not hard to figure out why they want to go to this model. It's like,
But
Exactly.
it's a standard recurring revenue.
there is a
pot
lot
gold.
of hope and prayer around this this legislation
Yes.
that would help us on a statewide level to negotiate those prices so that libraries aren't stuck with $135 for one copy of an e-audiobook that's going to expire in 12 months.
Yeah. I hate to say it, I majored in economics in college, and I'm normally pretty much of a free economy kind of a guy. But there are certain areas, and I'll draw an imperfect parallel, but the pharmaceutical industry and this, because this is an area where you don't have a choice very much. You want this drug, or you want this book, or need this book.
One provider.
And it's one provider. There's no competition. And I think the publishers figured that out a little before we did. But in pharmaceuticals, we're considering having the federal government negotiate prices for Medicare on drugs. And a lot of people don't like that, and I don't like it, but except I take some drugs. And so
Prescription.
But I think, prescription, thank you. But we need to watch this legislation carefully because I think it's going to have to happen. at a state level, at a federal level, something. It's just out of control
It is.
and unrealistic. And I believe that authors and publishers are artists to some extent, and they deserve to be paid for their work. But there are some limits when there's no competition.
Follow-up question, how many libraries in the consortium?
So this consortium, I believe, is just under 24, I believe. So not all libraries want to join and share their materials. So this is across Illinois that we are part of. the consortium.
I'm assuming by being part of that consortium, you view that as a cost savings.
Yes, yes. Because these checkouts, as you can see here for one of these, yes, so here there's 111 checkouts for this title, 96 were from our copies. So that is 15 from other ones. Similar to here, we had 22 checkouts that weren't from our copies.
So we have to pay for those essentially.
So we do have, there is a fee for being part of the consortium.
Right,
But it definitely gives us wider access and is a savings, yes.
it reduces whole time.
Really silly question, 101. We have all these huge costs for ebooks. We have a budget and we have a certain limit on the revenue coming into the library district. So when we are running huge amounts, say like $1,500 a book, do we ever run to a point, this is for the board level or board role, where we just have to say we can't do anymore? I mean, until we get more tax money in? Well, what happens if you have spiraling demand but not enough?
That's the budgeting process.
That's exactly what Van and her staff are responsible for doing, and why you wind up with those big wait times, because they're already metering how much they're spending.
Okay, so they're up against a budget that they cannot exceed right now.
Correct.
Yes.
And is there any limit? Okay, so they're up against a budget, you can't go over it.
Yes.
Is there a limit on a per book thing? I mean, why, for instance, why spend $1,500 on Prince Harry's book versus then run out of money in the budget when you have something that somebody needs? I'm just curious on that.
With this, we do follow where the demand is. So.
Oh, okay, it's according to demand.
Correct, yes. Where people have placed those holds, we will buy more copies than other books where there aren't as many people who have shown the interest, shown the weight for that title. So that is where we prioritize those budget for ebooks and audiobooks.
All right, do we have any more comments from trustees or questions from trustees?
Not tonight.
Thank you very much, Van. That was very enlightening. All right, we are on to item number 8. New business, item A, update to library services policy 5.2.6, non-resident fee card.
And this is based on the Cards for Kids expansion that occurred earlier this year. This new law allows the library the choice to waive non-resident fees for cards for kids under the age of 18 that otherwise qualify for a non-resident fee card. So basically this is free cards for kids who are essentially in your school district, because that's the way the non-resident law works, for where kids are eligible to buy, or families are eligible to buy a library card. So this would add a paragraph to our library services policy that would allow free cards for kids under the age of 18 who otherwise qualify for a non-resident card.
I move we approve that.
I second. All right. All those in favor of approving the updated library services policy?
Can we get a little brief discussion on that? Do we know what the cost of this is?
We can have discussion, but I thought get the motion on the floor seconded.
Yes.
Seconded, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Seconded and thirded. We're unsure of what the impact will be, because we do not have a good handle on how many folks would take advantage of this. However, this would pave the way for us to begin with our school district. One of our, I one of the ideals that we've had and that we've been working towards is we would like to work with the schools and use a model that's been used elsewhere where kids registering for school would also register for a library card. And this allows teachers to more effectively use the library's digital materials and electronic resources like databases in the classroom if the kids all have their library cards, so then they can point them at the library's databases. So this bridges that gap for that small number of kids, and I believe the last time Allison had James over at the school district run the numbers on non-resident children, it was a few hundred children total.
And just to clarify, these
District
aren't,
58.
for example, people that lived in Oak Brook. This is only
Yes.
those that don't have any other
Yes.
library district assigned to them. Okay.
And just to clarify, this is not the mechanism where school registration is coupled with library. This is not approving that yet.
No, this is just
Because I can see
allowing
that.
us to do cards
Especially,
without the
you
fee.
mentioned the digital tie-in to that, and might
Yeah.
go right back to the cost.
Yeah.
So I think that should be considered
There's a
separately.
shock.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Well, and you have to remember that the kids are already doing the cloud library thing where we have the cloud link, and the school district puts way more money into the cloud link collection than we do because we're the one-to-one district, and they always want them to have something to read, so they always have access to cloud library, so they can always download it.
Any other comments before we vote? All right, we had a motion and a second to approve the library services policy for the non-resident fee card. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And all those abstain. All right, the motion has been passed. Item B, addition of 3.52.1, substitutes and interns to personnel policy vacation section.
Okay, so this is being driven by the Paid Leave for All Workers Act, which is coming onto the books here in Illinois as of January 1st. We're getting ahead of it. That act provides for 1 hour of paid time off for every 40 hours worked. Now, as you know, all of our staff do qualify for vacation time. However, this is for those two oddball categories of staff, because it's all of our regular staff qualify for vacation time under our current policy. This is our substitutes whose hours fluctuate wildly. They can work 0 hours in a pay period, or they can work 30 hours in a week. So they literally do fluctuate wildly. So in order to comply with this law, we need to offer at the minimum 1 hour of paid time off for every 40 hours worked. So this means our substitute librarians would qualify for some paid time off, and also our interns, which is primarily our social work interns, would qualify for those few hours. Now, it's a lot easier to calculate for our social work interns because they are working through Aurora University, and each one is working with a set number of hours. We know when they start with us exactly how many hours they're going to work with us, and there's a whole plan to it. So they're easy. The substitute librarians are going to be a little more work, but this brings us into compliance with the law. So this is just in keeping with the statute that, yes. And the language that is used in this either comes primarily from the law itself or from, in your packet, you see you have the HR sources, what did they call it?
The field guide.
Their field guide to the new law. So we did credit a lot of their language on that.
Seeing as we don't have a choice, motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Do we have any comments or discussion? All right, should we go ahead and proceed with roll call for financial?
Sure. Trustee Doherty?
Yes.
Trustee Humphries?
Yes.
Trustee Kuntia?
Yes.
Trustee Nienberg?
Aye.
Trustee Sladak?
Yes.
President Gagani?
Yes. All right, that Motion has been passed. Item C, changes to 2023 library closings and holidays.
And this would be similar to what we did in 2022. It would make the Sunday the 24th and Sunday the 31st as unpaid library closings, and then have the observed holiday for Christmas Eve on Tuesday the 26th, the day after Christmas. This will help us immensely with staffing and everybody's floating holiday that they would then get in the rest of that pay period. And as I said, similar to what we did this year. And typically the day after Christmas is a very, very slow day.
Those are the only changes from 20?
Yep, that's it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I was like, me too. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And all those abstain. All right, we have approved the 2023 library closings and holidays as presented.
Could I move for a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Before we go into
Budget! Everybody's favorite.
Second.
Perfect. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, let's go ahead and just round it to 9:15. Go ahead and proceed with our meeting at 9:16. So we're at item letter D, preliminary budget.
Right, as you all may remember, if you've been with us for a while, we always start our budget process here in June with a preliminary budget draft. Generally, this gives us estimates of where we think we're going to end the current year, and the first look at revenues and expenditures for 2024. We recently got all of the final numbers from 2022 back from the village. So as you can see, the library fund balance actual at the end of 2022 was $1.2 million. This is a strong ending for us in 2022, and we look at ending 2023 somewhere right around the $1 million mark in that library fund. And that's important because this board has, for the past 5 years or more, as long as I've been here, been utilizing a strategy of using fund balance to help mitigate the tax levy increase in any year. So we're always looking back at what we've got in that fund balance from a previous year that we can put toward this year so we don't have to increase the levy any more than absolutely necessary. Another thing to make sure that we're keeping in mind as we go through this, you will see that those estimates will evolve from June to when the final budget is presented in August. Our budget is required to the village by August 31st, so traditionally we pass it at our fourth Wednesday of August board meeting and send it right over. I totally lost where I was going with that. So we do update those estimates throughout the 3 presentations of the budget as we're getting numbers. Because this is for the calendar year 2024, we are budgeting very far in advance, and there are some big numbers that we will just be getting the preliminary information about by the time we have to pass this budget. And that includes our two of our largest factors is insurance. Insurance for the staff and insurance for the library, all the liability and all of property, and the staff benefits. Generally, we get a first peek at the liability insurance in July at our insurance consortium's summer membership meeting. We don't usually get a good idea of what's happening with the employee insurance until more like August. So, and we don't get final numbers on the employee benefits till October, or final numbers on our liability insurance until December. So we're always working with estimates in these budgets.
I know last year there was kind of like a lot of buzz about insurance was going to be just, you know,
through the roof, right?
Yes. Have you gotten any like buzz about either one this year? No, like warnings, forewarnings, forecastings?
No forewarnings, no prepare yourself for this meeting. So I'm hoping that means that we can be in a little more reasonable projection area. So I do want to say that we have the capital replacement fund in here. Don't really pay attention to it yet. We're not ready. Ian, our building operations director, is meeting with our construction management firm about curtain wall and windows, some couple of things that we need to get done, timing of that, thinking about carpet, and as we're looking at some of the things that are going to be in the draft strategic plan that you all saw at the strategic retreat, some of the suggestions that were starting to come. So we are probably going to recommend moving the carpet replacement back a year or two in order for us to better look at those other capital projects that we may want to include come in the future. All right. Next is revenue projections. As you can see, our estimated, the biggest change here is here in personal property replacement tax. And as you can see, our estimated attainment is well over what we budgeted for. It was very high in the previous year as well. For some reason, personal property replacement tax in Illinois is going through the roof. I don't know why. This is a really weird law that's based on like 1976, and when and we get a percentage of what the village gets, and that's about as much about that as I can tell you. And you can ask Dave Fieldman, because personal property replacement tax is basically smoke and mirrors, but we're getting a whole bunch of money from it, so yeah. Other than that, there aren't a whole lot of changes. On the revenue side, we are getting strong investment income again, finally, so that is back up, but not a whole lot of changes there. Then as we move deeper in, we're into our expenditures. On the personnel side, this is the personnel pieces of our budget all totaled up. We are looking at about a 5.1% increase. This includes our re-benchmarked salary schedule that had pay grade changes that went from decreasing by 3% to increasing by 13.5%. So what we did is we've looked at giving each employee their salary structure increment or a cost of living increment of 4%, whichever is greater for the employee. So that is factored into there. We've also had a lot of turnover, so there's been a lot of changes in folks' salaries. Also, this is impacting on the benefits side because we have people, we had people who were electing family coverage who aren't with the library anymore, and now we have, and the replacement person is only electing single coverage, which is a lot less expensive for us. We did include a factor of 10% for the insurances, and there is also a slight increase to our IMRF pension, but not a humongous one.
Julie, what's driving the part-time wage increase to that?
Oh, we had a couple of reclassifications from salaried to part-time. Also, the highest percentages for increase in the new salary schedule were all at the lowest end of the salary of the pay grades, and those are by and large our part-time positions. So all of your 13.5% increases were all in part-time wages. And then we come to, this is our, it's all going to fit neatly. Anyway, on non-personnel lines, we're at 5.8%, and this is largely driven by just a few big changes. So those include, the largest increase is for cleaning. As discussed at previous meetings, as you know, our new cleaning company is approximately 30% higher than the cleaning company that quit on us. And when we took those out to bid, all of the companies came in within about $100 a month of each other. So that we had a cleaning company for almost 3 years that had severely underbid the contract 3 years ago. And particularly as wages have skyrocketed and the cost of supplies have skyrocketed, they were not making money on our contract anymore, and so they bowed out, and we had to find someone else. So cleaning, then as presented earlier this evening, our electronic resources. In the capital expenditures line, there is a $12,000 increase that would expand our current pickup lockers. In the conferences, seminars, and meetings, and relatedly, dues and memberships, we are returning to pre-COVID levels now that staff are willing to go to meetings. They are looking to travel again. The big conferences are all back, all in person.
Like the ALA.
Yes, they have started new ones, like our security summit that our building operations folks were able to go to, so including those sorts of things. And for the liability insurance, we are figuring a 20% increase. It is offset by the fact that our increase last year did not go up to the budgeted level, so it kind of mitigates that number a little bit. And then our staff recognition programs includes affinity groups and staff social events as well. And as you know, that a lot of our staff social events are food, and the cost of food has gone up astronomically.
What's driving the 20% liability increase?
That's a guess. We will not have any sort of anything until mid-July from the actual broker.
But why are we assuming such a big increase?
Because that's what they told us to assume last year. So we start with last year's number, we go to the brokerage meeting in July. They'll give us, basically they give all the libraries a what to put in your budget number. And so that is one I'm hoping to adjust to more like 10% when we come back. We'll see what they have to say. The catastrophic losses in the Midwest has been driving a hardening market for liability insurance. So overall,
And electronic resources, the 48,000, is that match? I have to go back and look at our presentation. Does that match with Van's request? Is that what that is?
That is Van's request plus Allison's request. So that's both sides of the coin.
Adult kid.
Yeah, and
And I also just want to add, it's also increases in the databases, our subscriptions, so.
Oh, yeah.
And that is going up quite a bit as well.
So that is a 5.8% overall increase in non-personnel lines, but as you can see, that a 5.8% increase comes out to $106,000. We do not have, the bulk of our budget is personnel and personnel expenses. And we'll get to the Illinois library standards and how we stack up to other libraries in a little bit. But the overall increase, at this point is 5.3% is what we are proposing to you. This includes everything that our management team has asked for, all of those changes. As you can see, there are some areas where the staff have tried very hard to tighten up those budgets, especially in supplies, in building maintenance services. Ian did his best to offset that cleaning service number to the best as he could without hampering all the other things that need to happen to keep this building running well.
Yeah. It amazes me that I can see any zeros up there at all with the inflationary pressures. That means we're really cutting back in many of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, we've just gone through, a round of strategic planning, and we haven't quite seen the recommendations from the consultants yet, but I think we know what some of them might be based on those conversations. Obviously, Van, you've considered that very much as part of your budget. Is that similarly being considered? I mean, again, we don't know specifics, and some of them seem like they might be, bigger projects that would require, capital.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we're kind of trying to figure out for the library capital replacement fund is, putting in, because there were some capital projects that we're thinking would need some exploration, and to do that we would likely need both the architect and the construction management firm to do some cost estimation. We would like to put that in the capital needs, the capital replacement fund portion, but also I will say that we kept the professional services line, which is where all of our consultants are paid from, even. And this year we had paid for EDI consultant, we paid for our strategic planning consultant, we also paid for the re-benchmarking of the salary schedule. So there's a pot of money there in professional services for some consulting around what's in the strategic plan.
Are there any considerations for improvements in safety and security measures anywhere in the budget?
At this moment, Ian is looking at the number one thing we need to do is the camera software. And Ian is working very hard to try to get some numbers into this budget for that. That would actually also be from capital, I believe.
How about anything on the staffing side?
On the staffing side, we've just hired a new building operations monitor. We had one of our guys left us, and now Miriam Maja has joined us, and so we are still running at 2.5 FTE for our building operations monitors. And so far, with Ian also acting as monitor, we've been able to keep our staffing level up to what we feel is an adequate level.
And you feel comfortable with that?
I do. And one of the things that we could do with some of that professional services money is if we wanted to do some sort of security evaluation could be done within those dollars as well.
Julie, what's in the building maintenance services line, 5430? I noticed it's
lots.
a high budget, and then it came in a lot.
That's all the stuff. That's everything from the filters on the HVAC to fixing the plate on for the projector to
the automatic doors.
Or
the regular doors, which always have issues.
Yes.
HVAC.
So the cameras and things like that would fall into that category?
Yeah, yes.
It would, okay.
They would.
Yes.
Because I guess I'm curious, why the proposed budget's $85,000 if we ended up coming in, he's so low.
He's
this year.
really trying to keep.
The expansion of the cameras would be.
Well,
right, okay.
we're not sure where we're gonna wind up. That building maintenance services is always one of those lines where
I'm sure it's hard to kind of.
one major
things that
thing
come up.
breaks,
Yeah.
and suddenly that number is a very different number.
Got it.
I'm gonna come back to this later, but trying to figure this out 18 months before then is,
Yeah.
is,
It's always a bit of a,
it's not a bit, it's untenable,
yeah,
but well,
it's what we do.
I'll talk about that later.
Nature of public bureaucracy. All right, so for estimating what I am proposing for this preliminary draft is a 5% levy increase. We are making an assumption of approximately 2% increase in our EAV, and I will show you our historical EAV in a couple of minutes. The 5%, because the EAV and the levy the tax rate and the EAV kind of equal out over what the levy is. So any change in the EAV reduces the tax rate. So you can see that the effective change to the tax rate is estimated at 2.88% rather than the 5% that the suggested levy is. So what happens? You pass a levy. It's a dollar amount. That dollar amount is spread over the value of the entire village of Downers Grove. So if this year there are 2 more $1 million businesses in Downers Grove than there were last year, then that levy gets spread out a little bit thinner to everyone else, because now those $1 million businesses are paying a share as well. So we are looking at, glasses back on so I can see what I'm talking about. And as you can see, the impact to the average homeowner for this. So our average home has gone up in value in Downers Grove. We are up at $374,500 is now our median home value in Downers. The estimated change in taxes paid would be $6.84. That would be, it constitutes about $1.92 per $100 of valuation of the home. So that's a little way for you all to do easy math. If you know your home is worth $500,000 and it's $1.92 approximately per $100,000, then you can figure that your personal taxes would go up about $10.
The bread I buy at the grocery store went up more than
Let's not talk about eggs. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this gives you a little bit of a look at what has happened with our tax rate, our levy, and our EAV, the equalized assessed valuation of property in the district. As you can see, our tax rate in each of the last 5 years has fallen. That is because the EAV has gone up by more than what the levy increase was. So again, they have that inverse proportion. So the estimate for our actual tax rate would be 0.2060, which would be the highest tax rate we have had since 2020. As you can see, we were at 2.1 and a smidgen back in 2020. And the average paid per home, per $100,000 of home value would be a total of about $68.65. So less than $70 per home value. Again, that's a way to do some easy math on what that might be for your particular home. We've also kept track of what we've done with wages and salaries over the last few years. So we are looking at that 4% cost of living or the salary structure increment for each of our folks. Now we get to, according to the standards for Illinois public libraries, they say that we should be using the Illinois Public Library Annual Report percentage analysis to evaluate our budget. And so this gives statewide averages in what is spent by libraries on various portions of their budget. As you can see, we spend a little more on salaries and benefits and materials, and then our all other expenditures are very low. This is actually very common for city and village libraries that typically receive some of their professional services, such as financial services and payroll, through their village, which we do. And also being a part of the village's franchise agreement, we don't pay for electricity. So that is a huge part of that other expenses that we don't have to pay for, and that also makes those changes in how those percentages are. There are many more public library districts in the state of Illinois than there are municipal libraries, so that kind of skews. Public library districts are independent taxing bodies that are not part of their municipality and so would not receive those services and have to pay for their electricity. So there's the big pie chart. As you can see, it's salaries and benefits is always our number one. We pay for our people, and our people are excellent. We do try to keep our materials budgets over those statewide percentages because as a 5-star library, as an established library with a very good reputation, we try to make sure that our collections are stellar. And one of the ways that we do that is by keeping up with things like electronic materials demand. All right, so that's what
we have
I had for you all.
a crack at keeping the 5-star level
Let's try.
with these projections.
Let's hope so. Those actually run about 2 years in arrears, because so that Illinois Public Library Annual Report, that data is then sent to the Public Library Data Service, which is the federal repository of public library data, crunched all together with all the different states. And so that's where Library Journal grabs their information for doing their calculations for 5-star libraries. So it's usually about 2 years behind. So, questions?
5-star rating is compared to, let's say, Mississippi.
Questions, thoughts, ideas? I also, for the board and for anyone following along at home, the board packet is also posted on our website every meeting, so you can go in and look at all of these a little closer. There is also a narrative portion to this that goes through line by line detail especially on the expenditure side, and talks about what is contained in each line and how we got to where we are with it.
Julie, I'm assuming we'll go through a similar process to last year. Will you work up different scenarios?
Yes,
requested?
and depending on what you all want to see, that's what I'm here for, is what do you want to see? One of the things that I will want to make sure that we're bearing in mind at this time is on the overall here. The current estimate, under what I'm proposing with the 5% levy increase and these estimated expenses, puts us at about a $445,000 ending balance for our library fund. And that is approximately what our operating reserves policy says we have to have in there. So that
That's
was
like
really
the two boiler,
the,
whatever
yeah,
the formula
the,
is.
yes, yes, the HVAC unit,
Right,
the
plus
boiler,
this, plus
part of the
this,
roof,
yeah,
yeah.
right,
The catastrophic emergency fund.
Yeah.
Although now that we have the capital replacement fund, that's a little healthier.
Yeah.
We don't, we're not quite so on the edge.
Dire, yeah.
But the two boiler and roof.
Yeah.
Still have to.
So I'll go ahead and lob one request for one scenario. We're on a 5-year run of a declining tax rate. Can we see one scenario with a flat tax rate?
Okay. I can, yeah, I'll figure out how to do that. Put my glasses back up.
I feel like I've just gotten hit with a hammer, but I expected to be hit with a sledge. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little better than or a little less bad than I thought I would.
Yeah, and as I said, the expenditures numbers that you will see next month won't be these expenditure numbers. And as we get through, I'll have all of the numbers for being halfway through the budget year for this year's estimated end. So that helps us, every month we get a little closer to what we think it's going to be.
I heard today that the Fed says we're not going to get down to the 2% inflation thing for a couple more years, at least. So that's their goal.
When do we expect to get more information about the insurance impacts?
The liability insurance I will get in mid-July.
Okay.
So that will be included in the July or next budget draft. So I'm hoping that we might have something from the village about the employee benefits insurance as well. Some kind of preliminary number.
When did we receive that number last year? Was it in August?
August.
Yeah.
August, yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Right.
What did they say? What did they say?
Here again, I just got to say this. I love Downers Grove and I love Village Hall, but they don't pass their budget until November.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to pass ours in August? Just saying.
That's a question for you all to ask the village council.
That wasn't a question for you. That was a question for the walls.
This is my first time through the budget process. I thought it was only the smoke making my eyes glaze. Now I'm not sure.
Blames Canada.
I can actually use a Kleenex.
But thank you for.
Thanks, Jen.
I mean, every number on that chart takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
You got to remember that.
Well,
Thank you.
and again, the village, we were unable to utilize the village's financial software's budget planning module for the beginning of this budget cycle because they had not yet closed fiscal 22, so they weren't yet able to open budget planning for 24.
Okay.
And just again, kudos to the Economic Development Corporation for keeping the tax base increasing.
Yes, and that's the other number that we'll be looking for is usually by the beginning of July, the village knows what EAV increase number they will be using in their budget, and they always share that with us, so then we mirror that here as well. Okay.
And budget
So-
preparation is exactly why you got your MLS, right?
No, budget preparation is why I worked for a CPA that did school and other government entity audits as my summer job all through high school.
There you go.
Yes, I was that big. All right. Are there any other scenarios anybody else wants me to explore? In general, if the estimates and the expenditures pull back, I will adjust that 5% down as far as I can get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you always do that, so I couldn't ask for that.
Yeah,
but I
we're,
didn't-
we're always trying our best to keep
Yeah.
that as low as possible. Without, it's kind of a name that tune, how low can you go without actually affecting service negatively?
Or doubling the electronic holds.
Or doubling electronic holds or any of those lovely things.
We heard you.
All right. Any other budget comments from trustees? Close that item out. All right, we're on to item number 9, unfinished business, the bylaws update.
I just had a quick comment. Someone in the audience tonight raised the issue of the Illinois Local Library Act not being included in that non-exhaustive list in Article 3. It is on the addendum to the bylaws. It's just a matter of the formatting. We did that as an attachment so that it's easier to tweak as laws come and go. But it is there. We have not removed governance through the Illinois Local Library Act in the new bylaws.
I mean, do we have to put in there that, yes, we will obey the law?
I think we did. We have that as required by law
Yeah.
phrase there, so
Yeah, I mean, forgive me.
just wanted to clarify
It's
that.
getting late, so.
Yeah, it is listed in
Yep.
reference page, hyperlink.
I'd like to move to approve the bylaws as presented.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the bylaws as presented.
Discussion. I'm ready to
Open
go.
for discussion.
Maybe discussion down on the bylaws.
Seems like it. All right, well, we will go ahead and proceed with the voice vote on this.
Roll call.
Roll call, sorry.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
I made that mistake once before, so.
And the new bylaws, if you've looked at them,
Mhm.
make it easier to do more voice votes on the routine stuff.
I was like, thank you.
Love it.
Yeah.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Humphreys.
Yes.
Trustee Quintia.
Yes.
Trustee Nienberg. Trustee Sladak.
Yes.
President Gagani.
Yes. All right. Thank you again to Trustee Sladak for all her work on bylaws. We're very excited about this new and refined bylaws. All right, item 10.
Not a Marxist document.
Item 10, library director's report.
All right, you have my written report. I'm happy to report that the high-level strategic plan draft should come before the board in July, and you should be seeing a draft of that even sooner. We will be having a meeting of the management team tentatively set with Rethinking Libraries on July 12th. So to start thinking about the activities plan for that high-level plan. So we're very excited to get that done. In case, just to highlight what's in my written report, there is also a statewide database package on the horizon that should, starting sometime in 2024, save us a lot of money. The state has put forward $5 million in new funding to fund databases for all libraries statewide. And so we're very excited to see what comes in that package, because those are subscriptions we won't have to pay for anymore. So, fingers crossed. Our Library Foundation is planning a fundraiser for early October, so keep your calendars open in early October for that fundraiser. As I mentioned earlier, Miriam Meja has started as a building operations monitor, and I did want to let you know that Jim Wool had talked about window painting by an outside group. Prior to Mr. Wool's request, we had only ever done window painting as part of a larger community organization's event. Namely, the 2 times we do window painting per year before this had been with the Rotary Club, doing the Halloween window painting, and with EQDG, doing the Pride Month window painting. Both of those are downtown-wide events that include all of the businesses in the downtown. And given our experience with having an individual group do window painting, we have decided that we are going to stick with only going with these community-wide organized window painting events for the time being. There was a lot of time and energy spent to get the windows painted for the veterans. And just, it was a lot. So we're just going to,
I understand, so we're not going to reapply the same policy for next year?
Right, and he was, and we had told Mr. Wool that he was the first one outside of these larger community events to want to do window painting, and so he was our beta test.
So if there were, say, the downtown businesses organize some kind of a veterans thing,
yes,
then it would,
absolutely,
yeah.
Yes.
And speaking of the downtown businesses, both EQDG and the Rotary Club, for those 2 downtown-wide things, are coordinated through the Downtown Management Corporation, which is quasi-government. So,
but what that means is, if the fact that his organization is not part of an event sponsored by or coordinated with downtown management, means he doesn't have the same access to that kind of a display as those other groups, which are just other groups.
yeah. But he could if he organized a group.
Yeah, but what constitutes a community event? Like, we're getting into a slippery slope on what's allowed and what's not.
There's a slippery slope too if all of a sudden you open up to any organization that's an NGO says we want to paint a window. You don't know who you're really going to get painting windows either.
Definitely.
So
Both extremes.
Yeah. And Mr. Wool had characterized his window painting as being with the American Legion. So the American Legion wanted to organize patriotic window painting for any of the various patriotic veterans, 4th of July, whatever.
I'm confused. So all he would have to do is get the American Legion to co-sponsor for him, and then he can do it?
I was thinking something like that would be downtown-wide or community-wide.
It seems like
not just the light,
unfair restriction to put on something that you have to gin up a downtown-wide event to have.
Bill, frankly, the amount of time that we spent on Mr. Wool and that window painting, was 25 times more time and energy than we have
why is
spent
that?
on anybody else's window painting combined.
Why?
Because he had he just had question after question after
Okay,
question.
so not the physical
and-
painting the window, it's
yeah.
more time consuming.
Well, there is one physical part, and that is both the Rotary Club and EQDG pays to clean all the windows at the end of the display
Okay.
also.
It could be a requirement.
Yeah.
Seems like we
So-
need a more well thought out policy around this than just saying no. It just has to be a community event.
So the board can take that up
Yeah.
if you care to.
It's something we can discuss.
And as for FOIA requests, Mr. Wool mentioned that he did not receive certain documents. He asked for emails. He got emails. I wanted and to address the commenter about circulation department and the ability of staff to switch shifts. The circulation department can, members of that staff can switch shifts. There are just very distinct parameters under which they can do it. They must switch their shifts, and this was sent out to the board. They must switch shifts prior to that month's schedule being published. And all of those staff members receive vacation time, personal time, and sick time. So if they need to take off after the schedule is published, the staff is expected to use some of their paid time off.
Is that
to do
different
so.
for the circulation department than other departments?
Each department has their own way of
Procedure.
their individual procedure. Each manager determines the procedure for the department. The circulation department is approximately over one third of our staff is in a single department, and most of them are 18-hour a week or less employees. So,
But other departments, other departments can switch within the 1 month scheduling.
it depends on the department.
Why does this keep coming up? Like, why is this coming up again?
This is one
The
staff.
same person,
This is
same
one
person.
staff member bringing it up multiple times. One forward.
It's also
Yes.
because it's the largest department, and the way I read that document that we got was that, I mean, they'd almost have to hire another person just to manage that schedule, because it is so time consuming to juggle all of the stuff if it happens the week of or the week before. Or
Is the
something.
department
And-
considering any changes to the policy?
They are
Based
not
on
at
where it
this
was?
time. And Christine Lees, the manager of the circulation department, is very proud of the fact that no one has ever been denied taking time off that they needed. It's just whether they were able to switch a shift with someone else or they had to use paid time off.
And why can't they switch? What's the barrier to that?
I can actually speak to that a little bit too.
Yeah, within switching shifts, it's more than just, I'm gonna trade this shift with you. Is it in the same pay period? Is it the exact same number of hours? Because we have different people who cannot work over a certain threshold of hours, or then we have to enroll them in for benefits. And so if you're not working one-to-one or not working within the same pay period, it causes issues on the benefits side.
Not like salaried people swapping Wednesday for Friday.
Yes, and when you're talking about, adult and teen services where most of their staff are salaried folks, trading Wednesday for Friday isn't a huge deal. And they're also exempt staff. This is primarily hourly part-time staff.
I'll also, just from the number standpoint, because myself and our business office assistant, Scott Anderson, we manage everyone's PTO, their paid time off and their numbers, and we track it every pay period to see how much everybody has left and make sure nobody's going over. And especially a department that size, if everyone switches throughout the year to avoid having to use their paid time off, because you always want to, hold that near and dear to in case you need it. They were reaching the end of the year, and not only were we going, hey, your staff are going to lose some of their paid time off because they haven't used it by the end of the year, which is our policy, but also then they had all these staff members with all of this time off sitting there, and everybody was requesting time off at the same time. And then they weren't able to staff the service desks properly, or the service desk properly. So they were running into issues of everybody kind of saving their time till the end of the year, and then they weren't able to function, as they need to.
And then I also just wanted to touch on my attendance at the ALA annual conference. It was amazing. I had a wonderful time. There were about 100 people at the panel that I was on, and I was very proud to be there. And I was able to attend some sessions with some really, really excellent speakers, including the author Judy Blume, our poet laureate Amanda Gorman, and a wonderful comedian and author Masoon Zayed, who has written a fantastic graphic novel for middle schoolers, and I was able to get a signed copy of that for us that they will be using as a giveaway.
Nice.
All right, that's it.
Caitlin, did you want to give a quick update, just the same kind of update regarding the personnel matter?
Absolutely, yes. The latest update that I've received from the lawyers is that they have completed their staff interviews, all of the staff that they had decided they wanted to speak with, and they are in the process of writing up their final report. And the goal is to have it to us for board review for the July meeting, that's the latest I've been told as of yesterday. I provided a little bit of extra documentation that had come up within their conversations, and so they're just finishing up their review and writing up all their findings.
And you'll put that little one-line report in the minutes?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Caitlin.
You're welcome.
We are on to item 11, trustee comments and requests for information.
I have a question. One of the people who attended tonight brought up what may be an error in the land acknowledgement. If that indeed is true, that misrepresents an entire segment of the Christian community, how difficult would that be to make those changes that they're suggesting?
We will investigate.
Yeah.
No, it's,
Yeah, that's.
thank you.
And suggest any changes.
She did point out that we did say that it is a living document.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that was, yeah. Just a quick comment from, I'll put my Rotary Club hat on. The 2023 Rotary Growth Fest broke a number of records for success. And we want to thank the library for their cooperation in many areas. We get in their way quite a bit. But the community seems to appreciate both sides of that. Just wanted you to know that GrowFest, remind you, of course, that GrowFest is a charity event. And in the 12 years or so that, not counting this year, we've returned over $600,000 to the community in the form of grants to not-for-profit organizations and scholarships and so forth. And this was a banner year, so we'll be able to continue that trend, thanks to many groups, including the library.
Oh, and on that, I forgot, shout out to Emmanuel Lutheran for allowing library staff to park in their parking lot on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so that the library staff could actually park.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday, Friday, yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so 4 days this time.
Because with our parking, with Forest and Forest North completely shut, we ran into the problem. D lot was full by 8:30, and by 8:45, level 2 of the parking deck was full. Yeah.
Part of that
So-
wonderful cooperation I was talking about was that. In case you didn't notice, the library, the village lot that serves the library partially closed a day earlier this year than past years, which was a significant imposition.
I'll go next. I actually had a lot more to say about the ALA and Right to Read, but I think that we had some incredible speakers today that I don't need to say all of that. So instead, just a couple of notes and some personal comments. First to Van, thank you for that incredible, phenomenal presentation. Obviously, you highlighted exactly why we need to increase your budget and the importance of the digital collections that we have. But I also wanted to comment on your Next Chapters book club. I love it when staff kind of gives us a little highlight into things that maybe we don't know about, and that's one of those things that I didn't know about, and it is a shining example of the things that our library does to reach every single community member. And if you don't know what it is, I believe it's a book club for adults with intellectual disabilities, and it's incredible that we have so many book clubs for everyone, and it's just, I just wanted to point out that's one of those tiny little things that you put in there, and thank you for including that. Just the vast array of programming, the opportunities for kids of all ages. My kids are currently volunteering to help with the little book clubs. They come home every day with stories of the children they're talking to, the librarian staff that they work with, how much fun they're getting, and the opportunities they're getting to engage within our community and to work in a place that's safe and a place that they love. So another thing I love about our library, President Gagani and I were able to man the table at the farmers market, and we were in an incredible position because people walking in and walking out got to see us. Everyone stopped by to say hello. We love you. We love the book club, and everyone wanted to tell us their stories. Their stories about the book that they read or get recommendations. And there were 2 new residents at Downers Grove who signed up for their cards because they wanted to sign up right away. That was something that was so important to them, to become part of the library, to be able to come here. And then a couple of things. I was rereading the findings book, and just the number of people who responded to that survey, over 2,000 people. That's a really large number of people. And the commitment and the number of people verified by a third party unbiased opinion of the people that think EDI is important, and reaching out to the community is important, and getting everyone involved is important, and providing reading books and digital books and programming to everyone. I'm just really excited. Lastly, I am very excited about the Right to Read Act. I really am. I'm excited about Governor Pritzker. This is my personal signing it into law. And everything that's happened this week reminded me of my favorite quote by one of my favorite authors, Toni Morrison, which says, "Access to knowledge is the supreme act of a truly great civilization. Of all institutions that support to do this, free libraries stand virtually alone in accomplishing this mission." So that's all I have to say.
I have one question and probably a slightly longer comment than so my question was, I was excited to see that the new security system that will be using PITS will be coming online in the next couple months. Will we be able to demo that as a board or see that kind of in action? Databases are exciting. Fun. To make the budget point earlier,
yeah, I agree, definitely. Yeah. How soon do you want to do this? You seem really enthusiastic.
I do.
Well, we're hoping to go live August 1st. And we have all the data from PITS into Incident Tracker, and I'm working with the liaison there, and we're finalizing all of our infractions, suspensions, and things like that. It's a different layout than it is from PITS, so there's some tweaking that needs to be done, but just let me know. Yeah. I'm happy to do a demo for you.
The management team did the demo virtually,
yeah.
So that's a possibility.
I want to start by thanking Van, as Marley did, for her detailed and informative presentation. I really appreciated the storytelling you did using that data, and it just, as I think people in the room can attest, it was very compelling. I also want to say I arrived early today, which helped me avoid the congestion of the parking situation that happens on Wednesdays. But it gave me a chance to spend some time checking out the legacy wall. As several people mentioned, it's an impressive amount of great information, and I really learned a lot from it. So, again, thank you for EQDG and others for making that happen here. Arriving early also gave me the opportunity to pick up my summer reading club prizes, which I'm excited about. I'm up to my 3rd badge now, so if any of you board members
I won.
bring it.
Okay.
I'm
doing it.
On a more serious note, I did want to point out, the library's stance against book bans and censorship is nothing new. Our previous bylaws, which were in place for at least as many years as I've been on the board, and likely before many of us staff or other trustees became involved with the library, really contained, actually the previous bylaws contained stronger, more explicit language around censorship. It stated actually, quote, trustees must be prepared to support to the fullest the efforts of librarians in resisting censorship of library materials by groups or individuals, end quote. And that was in the previous bylaws. We've now adopted bylaws because of the Right to Read Act that kind of incorporates that to begin with. But it's been clear for many years to anyone who took the time to read our bylaws that we were pro-free speech. And the ALA Bill of Rights, that's not new either, as mentioned by Jenny and Sasha earlier. It was first adopted in 1939, long before the current leaders of that organization were born, and maybe even their parents were born. So, libraries have long been libraries have long been recognized as places for learning, and because they're one of the last free, openly accessible sources of information, they're an invaluable part of our community and essential to the continuation of our democracy and our constitutional rights to free speech. And that includes speech we don't agree with. As the Right to Read legislation came to pass, I did the thought exercise, which I invite you all to do, of imagining myself on the side of folks wanting to restrict access to certain books. Would, for example, I want my child to read something that I find morally reprehensible, like a treatise on replacement theory, or something that outlined women's natural role as subservient? No, I would not. Would I have a talk with her if she started quoting things from those books? Yes, I would. Do I think those books should be restricted by our public library? No, I don't. As Warner and David pointed out earlier, the library is a place for learning, a place to acknowledge different perspectives, even if, and maybe especially if they're anathema to our personal beliefs. And last, I wanted to reflect on something a friend asked me earlier this week when they found out about, this is someone, a Downers Grove resident who wasn't aware of kind of the last year or so of library board meetings and the discussions that have been happening. And they asked, well, how can you sit there and take it when people are saying things about you and the board that are not true? And I said, well, it does bother me, but I don't mind that much because I know it's not true, and I'm not going to change their mind, so I let it roll off my back. And after I said that, I looked at her and I realized I'd said the wrong thing. This is someone who'd gone through some experiences in her adult life where she didn't feel like she had a voice. And there I was sitting there with the privilege of having a voice in my community, and I wasn't saying anything, or saying that it didn't bother me. Unfortunately, there's just not enough time in the day for me to research and refute the things I hear that are untrue or based on misinformation, because I really believe strongly in evidence and facts, and it takes a lot more time and energy to research and thoughtfully compile factual statements than it does to repeat misinformation from unvetted sources or to present one's own opinion as fact. So I was very impressed and like Barnelli mentioned, deeply appreciated the remarks by Robin and Jenny and others who did their research and presented them in an informative and straightforward way. I still find it strange that I and other board members continue to be accused of things for which there's no real basis. We've been called Marxists and groomers and worshipers of some type of demon. But up until my conversation with this friend of mine, it never even crossed my mind to counter those falsehoods with facts because it seemed too ludicrous to address and not worth my time to engage. But as a very smart individual from my great discussions said earlier this week, if people say it often enough and loudly enough, it becomes accepted as truth. So, given the number of times I've been called a Marxist, I thought I'd better set the record straight. I'm not. Put that out there. Not that there is anything wrong with that, free speech, being free speech and all, but now you all know, and there won't be any question about it in the future. Because here's the thing, we trustees are members of the community just like you, and we're doing our best to serve and contribute to the continual improvement of our library. We're unpaid volunteers and use our own experiences and those of our neighbors to help shape the future of this really important Downers Grove institution. We're doing our best, and we bring our best to these meetings every month, in the face of disagreement and celebration, in the wake of conflict and accolades. And I hope everyone here takes a minute to reflect on that, on your own responsibility to create and sustain respectful relationships with the other folks in this room as fellow Downers Grovers. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to prolong anything, but I want to make one other quick thing that you just reminded me of, and that is the section of our agenda for public comments. Those are public comments to be directed to the Board of Trustees of the library, not to the staff of the library. And too many times in the recent months there have been comments made not about, but to. And I could use stronger verbs in that sentence, but I won't. But to the director and the assistant director and certain other individuals which are uncalled for. If they want to address the board and say they did this, that's one thing. But to look them in the eye and say, you did this, is inappropriate.
I have just a few things. They're, literally a repeat in order of what you two wanted to say. Very much less eloquent than Carissa, but thank you to Van again for your amazing and very data-driven presentation. I feel very fortunate to have gotten a hold of Lessons in Chemistry and Spare. And the audiobook is in fact better if a prince is reading it to you. So,
and Lessons in Chemistry is coming out on Apple TV soon.
Yes, right. And then, yes, thank you to EQDG for allowing the library to host Lexi Wall. It's wonderful. I was very fortunate to get here and spend, an hour. I probably would have spent 2 hours reading every single amazing biography. I learned so much. So that was a wonderful addition to the library. Yes, thank you to Cindy, who trained Bornali and I to work at the farmer's market. It was a lovely morning, and I'm looking forward to doing it again, meeting amazing individuals from the community. I feel a little frustrated that the trustee comments come at the end of the meeting. I feel like there are people that just want to say their piece, and they are not interested in having a respectable dialogue or hear other people's viewpoints, and that's very frustrating for people to come and say what they want to say, wag their finger, accuse people of things, call people names, and then bolt out. It's disappointing. So that being said, I will go ahead and say that I'm very proud of the state of Illinois for passing the Right to Read Act. I'm very fortunate to know the Representative Mike Simmons that initiated it, and very excited that Secretary of State Jim Lees and J.B. Pritzker signed it. Someone earlier had spoken about how when he was young, he didn't have to worry about books being on the shelf that offended him or were questionable. And to that I respond and say, when I was a youngster in my hometown, when I went to the library, I didn't see any books that pertained to me at all. There were absolutely no Indian American authors on the shelves. So I couldn't find anything that I related to. I'm currently reading a book that's banned in many states because it is about a woman or a female born going through her identity, her change in identity. And I wonder how many of my friends that came out in their late 20s because they were afraid to come out, how much their lives would have been impacted if they had read that as a high schooler or a middle schooler. So, these experiences matter. These books aren't pornography. They're life experiences that people are allowed to document, and they're your choice to pick up or walk past. So, I'm excited for the ALA to continue fighting its fight. And thank you to everyone that spoke at the meeting tonight.
And for sticking around to the end.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Especially past the budget. The budget portion.
Oh, I won't be at the next meeting. I'm just putting that out.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
There's been
We will
some
go
very-
ahead and,
Very poignant moments tonight.
yes, we will adjourn at 10:25.